That's a good incentive.
Okay. We're live? Yeah? Oh, okay. Okay, welcome everyone and welcome to the remote community. Very excited to have Andy today, and Andy Preston, also known as Braveheart. When I first started in the industry back in 2004, Andy was the first mythological, futures day trading creature. I actually remember him. I didn't want to embarrass him too much today, but I remember reading this magazine and finding out that he was actually on the same trading floor that I was at the time. But I think you had just left, and you came for one little stint on the Refco floor.
Yeah.
And those days, Andy was part of this new breed of trader that was transitioning. There was this whole transition from the pit onto screen-based, and he was the first, I'd say, poster boy for screen-based trading and what was possible. So I'm very excited to have you, and thank you for joining us today, Andy.
Thank you for having me.
And we're going to have a lot of questions. We'll open up Q&A for both in-house guys as well as the remote. I know there's a Lagarde speech at 6, so only a few of the guys will go. So it's not because they're being rude.
No problem.
But then they'll come back afterwards. So we'll get cracking and going. But very privileged, and I know everyone's very excited for today. So no pressure. In the answer. So let's just start straight from the beginning. I wanted to ask you how it all started, how your trading career started, why trading, and your very first days of walking on the floor and where that was.
Well, again, thank you for having me. Trading for me started in 1999. So I went to Loughborough University. I was very proud to be the only one in my school who actually went to university, first one in my family. And whilst at university, I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. I had a drive and eagerness to make money in something because I came from quite a humble background. I was just me and my mum at home, very small house. And she really looked after me really well when I was a kid. We didn't have much, and I wanted to give something back to her. That was my primary motivation at the time. And at university, I studied management science, so it was kind of a business degree. And whilst there in my second year, at the end of my second year, I got a job because my degree was a 4-year degree, so I had to do a placement in the middle of it. And I worked at Shell, the oil company, at their head office. And whilst there, I kind of got to know what trading was because I used to deal a lot with the gas trading there. And I kind of understood how the market moved just through my brief period there, and it interested me. So when I guess halfway through my fourth year, my last year at university, I started to apply for trading positions at banks. And my maths, unfortunately, wasn't great, and that really kind of put the dampener on many banks because obviously at the time especially they only wanted maths graduates. So that was a big problem for me. So that kind of closed that door. So I wasn't sure what else to do. So anyway, one day I went for a run, having graduated, and I bumped into a friend of mine who I hadn't seen him in 5-6 years, a friend of mine from school. Anyway, he said to me, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I've just graduated university and I went for interviews at banks but haven't got anywhere. I'm not doing anything at the moment. I'm claiming benefit. I was on the rock and roll with the dole." So he said, "Why don't you come up and meet my boss? I'm on the trading floor. And at the moment, they're looking for guys with no trading floor experience because trading was going onto the screens." So it was pure chance. I happened to bump into him. And anyway, I took him up on his offer, went up and met him for lunch, and I met a guy called Magnus. And this was a company called Mac Futures at the time.
Magnus is also quite a
Very big guy, yeah.
Bigger than life type of character as well, right?
Very scary dude. Yeah, massive bloke from Canada. He was from Vancouver. Yeah, he's huge. So my interview kind of consisted of how fast can you get my lunch for me, and why do you want to be a trader? So anyway, that was kind of my job interview. So I started about maybe I guess about 2 months after that. So that was my first foray into trading.
And then you arrive. What was the floor like when you started then? Because I remember when I started at Repco, it was a 300-man floor. You know, just felt the energy, felt something different. But you were starting when something completely new was happening.
Yeah, I literally started at the beginning of the screens. So at the time, we only had Eurex screens. So you could trade Eurex. They were called the old green and black system. So you could trade the Bund and the Schatz and the Bubble. And that was all you could trade on the screen at the time. So yeah, my first day on that particular trading floor was really scary because there was these guys that were screaming, swearing, smashing desks. There was no chair for me, so I had to sit on the floor.
I mean, the grads of today expecting a chair, a couple of more screens.
Yeah, well, I was sitting on the floor next to Magnus. And my lasting image was him one day standing up, smashing his whole keyboard down, and me going home and finding a space bar in my pants. So that was kind of my first experience of trading. So anyway, I kind of did that for about. It was completely unprofessional.
Did you enjoy it?
Well, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, but...
Because you came back the next day.
Yeah, well, I kept going back, apart from Thursdays. Every other Thursday I would collect my dole, so I had to go to... Because I wasn't being paid.
Traders need the dole in the beginning of the course.
Well, it was my train fare, that was, because I wasn't being paid. So for the first month, I guess, it was a bit, chaotic. I was just watching bits and pieces, and then after the first month, I went downstairs into the dungeon, they called it, into the basement. And that was the first, so the first day I started downstairs was the first day of the Euribor. And that was, so I was given 1 lot, and that was the first day. Yeah.
On the Euribors.
Euribor.
Oh, wow.
Very first day of Euribor.
Okay. First day of the Euribor on the screen.
First day.
Ah, okay. So now 1 lot, and yeah, we'll see how you graduate through the levels from the one. So before we go a little bit, even before I go to the next question, I just wanted to ask you, just to get a little bit more on a brief background. So you explained your academic background. Do you have a sporting background as well at all?
Yeah, I was quite sporty. I used to do a lot of running, track running, swimming. I was a bit of an all-rounder, to be honest, but I did specialise to begin with at Loughborough in running. Realised that I wasn't going to make, because Loughborough is, the primary sports college in the UK. And I realised that I never had what it took to kind of push it to the next level. So I took up triathlons because I was a swimmer and a runner, so I thought I'll do that. So yeah, I've always been heavily involved in sport.
Okay, and triathlon requires some certain type of strong strength of mind and stamina, and
a lot of
pushing
discipline
through and pushing through pain as well.
Yeah, pain. Yeah. I think one of the things I've always been able to do is push through a pain. I've got this weird, even today actually, I do a lot of
sadomasochist.
A lot of weird endurance kind of. I'm able to push through that somehow, but yeah.
And probably that could attribute maybe to some of your risk taking and
a lot of the pain you take sometimes in trading for sure.
Okay, so I think what we'll probably do in a maybe unchronological order is we'll jump and skip. So I'll probably ask why does everyone know you as Braveheart?
Well, being the only graduate on this trading floor when I started at Mac Futures, I used to get a lot of grief, a lot of stick. People would call me, all sorts of names, because these were all floor-based Essex boys who came down. And one of the things at the time that struck me was that these guys who traded on the floor, they never had a clue what drove the market. Their fundamental, they had no real knowledge of fundamentals. And me coming with a business degree and also having kind of researched thoroughly before reading the FT, there used to be a market section in the FT. I think there still is, but there was a really good summary, and I used to read that every day before I started, and it really kind of made sense to me. I don't know why, but it really made sense why things moved. Anyway, going onto the trading floor, these guys, all they used to do on the floor, on the actual floor, was follow bigger traders, banks, and all kind of stuff. And that was kind of it was very corrupt. They had mates, so they would know when big orders were coming in, and they used to piggyback it. And that's what all these guys did. Now, then, flood of these guys now transitioning from the floor to the trading screen, these guys never had a clue. And me knowing what drove the market gave me such a head start, and allowed me to progress very quickly. And because I knew and was confident at what drove the markets, it would allow me to progress very quickly and ask for more size and more size and more size. I was always asking. And
so you're always pushing the risk.
Always
you're
pushing the risk.
The traders that's always testing the risk managers.
Yeah. I was always. I was in this office banging on the door, like, I want more size. I want more size. I know this will happen. I know it. I want more size.
I know what's going to happen tomorrow morning.
And that's why I would put on big size over positions, and all the guys at the time, they were like, why did you do that? What made you do that? Why did you do that size? And after that, they just called me Braveheart. So
okay,
yeah,
so
because I had no fear.
Okay, and you released them from their work because they didn't make money anymore. So freedom, Braveheart.
Yeah, and you have to bear in mind, like, these are, I probably took the piss a little bit, because these guys, I mean, some of them are very successful. Like, there was guys that came from the trading floor, the live floor, that had made millions, like literally worth 10, 15 mil. And it wouldn't faze me, like, sitting next to these guys. Other guys would put them on a pedestal, but for me, I didn't respect them, because now we're in a brand new industry. And in my mind, these guys made money well, I guess there was an element of skill, but the skill that didn't translate well from the floor to the screen. And a lot of these guys, actually, they lost a lot of money because of that, because they never understood, on the screen, it was a completely different beast.
I mean, it's quite, their learning inputs, their flow inputs just completely changed overnight.
Completely.
So you starting, so let's speak about those first 2 years, because during the first 2 years of a trading career is, whenever I have a new trader starting, I say, you have to survive the first 2 years. You don't know, you have to commit, you have to be ruthless in your learning, ruthless in your development, but you need to survive those first 2 years, because then you start understanding who you are. So what was your first 2 years like? It sounded like you got off to a screamer and you maintained a screamer. So can you explain those 2 years? Yeah,
so as I say, I started off doing one lots on the Eurobond, and quickly understood, I wasn't making money, but I quickly understood what was going on. And with one lots, I mean, there wasn't much, to be honest, you could do. I mean, if you was offside, you couldn't, for whatever reason, you couldn't kind of scale in or scale out or anything. So I said to the risk manager, who was a guy called Ollie Jones, I said to him, look, I know exactly what's going on here. I think I understand why the markets are moving. Can I have some more size? So he gave me more size, gave me like 10s. And then I started to kind of break even on stuff. And then there was one day where there was a figure coming out, and it was Euroland's M3.
Yes, I remember the M3.
And the M3 numbers back then, the ECB at the time, I don't know if they still do, but at the time they had a religious target on M3, and it was one of their things that they really followed. And I knew that, but not many other guys did. Anyway, one particular day, M3 came out, and there was no scheduled release. You would only ever know 5 minutes before. It could be any time within a 4-day window. And all you used to get on your little CQG news panel, so we had a news panel that big, and that was our news. And it would flash up M3 imminent. And you knew that within the next 2 minutes, M3 was coming out. So anyway...
so like it just literally flashes out, and now you have to be ready for
M3 imminent in bold letters.
Okay.
So that was that was like Europe's non-farms, if you like. And anyway, this particular M3 came out, and the ECB forecast, I think at the time, was around 4% for M3, and it jumped from the previous of 2 up to 6 for whatever reason at the time. So I sold 10 lot in the Euribor, and it went down about 30 fat ticks. And that was kind of, everyone was like, what the fuck have you done? Like, they couldn't believe it, you know, and I got a lot of notoriety because of that. And because of that trade, you know, I could up,
by the risk manager.
My size went from 10 up to 100 very quickly, and then to 500, and then to 1,000.
And what was that timeline, if you can remember?
Probably, when was this? This would have been around March or April. No, this would have been December 99. And I was employed, so I was getting £800 a month, no profit. And
okay.
so after
that's a good deal, actually.
Yeah. So after that, obviously that day was December 99. I went straight onto a deal and was getting 60-40, and yeah.
And that was, and so okay, and then
from there, that was, I kind of, you know, never looked back after that. And the interest rate decisions, I think I had 200 lot limits, and I would in Euribor, and I would ask over interest rates to have 500s. Okay. And
over Duesenberg.
Yeah, over Duesenberg, the good old days. Yeah. And I wouldn't be scared to put it on.
Okay. It's you've seen that the moment I've come across one of my very close friends, a gentleman by the name of Sam Spinks. He used to do the same, knock down the risk manager, ask for all the size, get all the size on the very next trade. Were you a very similar type? You get the size, you test all the size.
Yeah, I would go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. But during that time, were there any, whilst you were going for it, were there any moments of humility, moments of taking a big hit?
Yeah.
And then, if you can explain in your first years, that first time you took a fairly big hit, and what goes on in your mind to kind of overcome and take the risk the next time around?
Yeah, I think I built my account up to around 100k, I think, and literally at the 100k mark, I think I lost like 30 grand in a day, and prior to that, I think my worst day had been like 5. Okay. So that was a big wake-up call, and I remember it like it was yesterday, and kind of brought me back down to earth, I guess, because I'd gone from making 100 ticks, and I was so like astounded at the time that you could make this money out of nowhere, because for me it was like a game, because it wasn't the real world. Even my dad, to be honest, didn't understand what I was doing. He said, why on earth are you doing this? Like, you went to university, you should have a proper job, and you're making £800 a month, like, this is a joke. Yeah. And I said, Dad, wait, you wait. And it brought me back down to earth for sure, because going quickly up to 100 grand in my account, it wasn't real almost.
And just before I continue on trading, because you mentioned something earlier on about your mother, that being such an important, powerful, motivating symbol. And I know with some trade, having something that can be incredibly motivating, but they can sometimes, make you work too hard, or if you get too involved. But that, when you first made and you started taking your first draws and you're able, what did that make you feel like? What was the first time you did something for your mother? I just wanted to speak about that feeling, that all of a sudden, that vindication.
I think my first good day, I took her out for dinner, and my mum had never been to a really nice restaurant, and we ordered rosé champagne, and I think that was like, that was, for her, that was she just couldn't believe it, and I actually remember my first £1,000 day, so 100 ticks I made, and I phoned mum and told her, and she just she couldn't believe it.
Sometimes we remember, no matter if traders have made multiple millions, generally remember their first £1,000 day.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Do you remember, was it on a figure or was it just trading?
It was just trading, I think, at the time. But yeah, because my mate who got me into trading, he had his first 1,000 tick day, so 10,000 on the same day. So we went out that day to the pub and bought all the drinks. Yeah.
Okay, so we mentioned about so the main reason of being a trader. You mentioned the gaming part. What was the the main fuel? Just the speculative, the game side of it, the money, a combination of all of them. What was the main?
I think it was a combination. Like I think coming from nothing, I had nothing to lose. Like I really didn't care, to be honest. Like I had a burning desire to do well, but I don't know why. I just didn't understand that this was possible, that you could make this kind of money from nothing. So it didn't feel real, So as quick as it came, I equally knew it could probably go quite quickly. So I always saved. Like at the beginning,
Yeah.
I didn't spend anything, and I remember my mate. I think I had about 300 grand in my account. And I still had my old Fiat Panda. And it was falling apart, to be honest. But I just didn't want to spend anything because I just didn't think it was going to last. I just thought this was, this wasn't real.
I think Ollie's spending for the first time in 12 years. Ollie's also...
Yeah.
Well, mainly on the missus.
Yeah, he just spends on the missus.
Yeah, I never had a missus, so that was probably a bonus at the time. But I remember thinking, my mate said to me, please get a new car. And so I ordered a new car after that.
Very similar to Navinda Sarau was also...
similar.
Yeah.
Similar, although I was, I didn't wear... Anyway, we can come on to that. That was a whole weird experience, that was, yeah.
Oh, you crossed each other's paths?
Oh, yeah, big time. We was in the same office for about, I guess, about a year.
Okay, where in London?
I was floating in and out of London because I was living in Canada.
Yes, he was also trading.
And he was trading, he was trading at CFT.
Yes, okay, yes.
Which I was a part of.
Along with Eric Juice, I don't know if you know him, he's one of our coaches.
No, I'm not sure.
He sat next to Nav for about 5 years. He was the Frenchman with a strong accent, he sits there.
Coming back, gaming was definitely, because I felt like I figured out why the markets were moving, I guess that's why it felt like a game, and I was getting such a rush, a buzz from getting things right. It was like, it was, and to be honest with you, all the odds were in my favour because knowing back then it was very inefficient and it was a brand new industry. It was probably luck that I graduated the year I did and I managed to get a job on the screens when I did because it was brand new, it was level playing field. So for many years, if you understood fundamentals and you had the trading size to back it up, you could make a lot of money very quickly.
But you still had to understand the fundamentals, do the work.
And you still had to take the risk.
I mean, all of that combination, a lot of people cannot do.
Yeah.
And especially of how you take the risk after you take a hit. I've seen that for almost 20 years. So those 2 years, then there was that going to 2001. You were building up, and then you had your first 7-figure day.
Yeah.
Over the over the catastrophic event that happened on the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
Can you explain that day? Also, I've heard by the grapevine that you also donated a large part of your earnings to the first responders in New York. So I thought that's where you got your name as well from Braveheart. Can you explain that day? Can you explain the trade? Because I actually traded that day, and it was my first, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 pound day. I was a grad. I just literally started, but you still have to have the skill set. I remember these fat orders lying on the book, still knowing what to do when. So if you can explain a little bit of how that trade, if we can isolate what actually the event happened, and how that created momentum into other events going forward.
So that particular day, we were sitting around. We wasn't doing much, to be honest. It was quite a boring day. And we was meant to be playing football that night as a company at 4 p.m. So anyway, we was kind of starting to get ready to go. I think it was about 8 or 8:30, something like that, in the morning in the US when the first plane went in. So We never had news wires as such in them days. And so our knowledge of what had happened was limited. But my first realization that something had happened, I used to follow, we never used to trade the US markets on the screen. They were still on the floor. But we used to have the quote board on the CQG. So I used to follow the Eurodollar, being a short end trader like Euribor and Schatz, but I had limits in the Bund as well and DAX. But I used to primarily focus on the Euribor, as you know. So I used to follow the Eurodollar quite a bit, the short end in America. And one thing I saw was that all of a sudden the Eurodollar spiked. And I was like, that's strange. So I shouted over to our analyst, guy who on the Squawk, and I said, what just happened? You know, because the Eurodollar just spiked, the Bund spiked, like the Schatz, and it all kind of went, and then it came back off. So I was like, what happened? And he said, I have no idea. I'll phone up someone at a bank. So he phoned up a bank trader, and he said, turn your TV on, there's been an accident in America. So we turned on the TV. So I sat back down, turned on the TV, and I saw...
You sat on the floor or on a chair?
No, I was on a chair now. So I saw one of the towers on fire. And in my mind, I saw how the market reacted. So I kind of had that ingrained, you know, even though the market had come back to where it was trading, I kind of, inside, I saw that reaction. So all of a sudden, we're sitting there, and I saw the other plane go in, and I saw the large explosion at the second tower, and instinctively, having seen what had happened, I bought max clip in the Bund, the Schatz, Euribor, all pretty, bang, bang, bang.
You know,
And,
I just wanted to so I want to pause you on the clips. I just, it sounds like you don't give yourself so much credit on, starting for the opportunity. But that little process of having a little quote board, making the creating that awareness, creating that that almost that focus of what's going on, ingraining the pattern that you had seen, and then the second, instead of another person can say, oh, what's going on, what's happening, getting lost in the moment, hearing the news, and having that ability to then to act upon what you've observed in the first instance, and that is a skill of pattern recognition, of understanding what you're acting, your little news wires, your quote board, the correlations that you're leaning on. So you enter in all the positions now. Yeah,
straight away in, and straight away it reacted. Pretty much after I got in, actually, that's when it reacted.
So you had best price.
Best prices, definitely best price in the Bund and Schatz. Euribor kind of on the way up.
Yeah.
Covered it within, I guess, I think I got out of my final lots after about 25 minutes, I guess. But then after that, obviously, there was a lot of rumours, there was a lot of scares. Obviously, the Pentagon, we had another wave on the Pentagon being bombed. So, and there was a lot of rumoursville. So there was money to be made all day after that.
And what did you, if you don't mind, what was the P&L by the end of that day?
I think it wasn't quite seven figures. It was about 900 grand, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you donated some of that.
20%.
20%.
I didn't feel it at the time. There was such a rush of adrenaline, and but that night I kind of watching the news. I felt awful, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was if we just zoom out, that's now still within 2 years of your career.
Yeah.
Starting.
Yeah, my best day prior to that, I think, had been about 60 grand.
60 grand
Yeah.
prior to that.
Yeah.
What was that on?
That would have been on one of the emergency rate cuts that we had.
Okay, which bank?
That would have been the ECB.
ECB.
Yeah, because we could only trade Europe. Yeah.
Good old Duesenberg.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So now 2 years, and you had that day. What now? What does that create in you? What does that catapult? Now you've got an account. Now you have.
Well,
money.
straight away after that day, the next day actually, I bought myself out my contract. I was fully backed after that, I think one of the things you said a minute ago was definitely a gift I had, and still have to an extent, is my ability to recognise patterns. One of the things I could do very well was spot a correlation. So not so much now to an extent, but back then markets would follow certain themes and certain patterns, and certain markets would follow each other to an extent. And being able to take that, I could take that to the next level having had money in my account, because before that I was kind of just trading news and figures and things like that, because I could always get best price on a figure. I was quick and thought very quickly. But after 9/11, as you say, I had money in my account, so now I could really start playing the correlation game. And one particular correlation I remember very well that worked really well was the oil S&P trade. So you used to be able to buy oil, and oil at the time was around $35-40 a barrel. But that was kind of the highs at the time. That was record highs for oil. And the S&P would go down every time oil would go up, pretty much. So I used to buy oil and waste 20-30 grand buying oil and high ticking it through the highs, bang, 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 but being short S&P at the time, knowing that the S&P would react negatively to that. So I'd be the one buying oil but selling S&P. And
so you would use your size in oil to play off that correlation?
I would waste money in oil
Yeah.
to make bigger money in S&P, knowing that pattern existed.
What size were you trading then? I mean, oil must have been incredibly thin those days as well, right?
Actually, it wasn't. No, it was a lot thicker than what you think.
Yeah, okay.
All the markets were, to be honest.
Well, actually, I do
Yeah.
remember those. I remember Bunds being 2,000 lots on the
That's
bid and
right.
offer all the way, and guys
Yeah.
scalping. You know, you're a small trader, but trading 100 contracts.
That's right. Yeah.
At that those early stage.
But I would waste, just to give you an idea, I would waste 20-30 grand in oil, but make 150, 200 grand in the S&P.
And that was a play. So once you find a correlation, do you just keep on ramming at the accelerator until?
I'll ram it till it doesn't work anymore. And back then it would work for, weeks. Now it will work for an hour, if that.
And then when do you decide to step off the accelerator? What's your
when you start losing
mechanics?
When you kind of get the feeling, like you'd see the reactions in the market weren't as good as they used to be. Obviously you'd start losing, and once you've lost kind of enough, then you kind of realise that it's broke.
And now what's happening in the industry as well at this time? So you're starting to, you're performing incredibly well. The industry is growing.
Yeah.
The futures day screen-based industry is in London is starting to sprout. I can imagine in America as well. Floors are getting bigger.
Yeah.
What's happening with that environment, that community? You becoming, I can imagine, the focus, what everyone's targeting.
Yeah.
And what's happening around you? What do you know? What's driving you? Which people are driving? Because you blazing ahead, but who's driving you, or you just fine leading the show? Were there other traders that were?
No, not really. I never used to focus on anyone else really. I just used to do my own thing, and I used to find pressure if I ever did start to look at other guys, what they're doing. I used to feel pressure from that, and I think the biggest thing that especially young traders can do is put too much pressure on themselves. And I did everything in my power to not apply pressure to myself. I kind of lived my life humbly, so that I wouldn't have a lot of expense, so that I wouldn't have to make money. Like I wouldn't want to put any pressure. That was the biggest thing. And I did start to feel pressure after that, actually.
Yeah.
In 2004, 2003.
I
remember
your name is.
Yeah, and I didn't like it, to be honest. And it was, I personally, that might have been a mistake for me to do that, just from my personality point of view. Because
Tom's doing a Playboy spread in a few weeks' time.
But yeah, that kind of put me on the map, doing that more than I was and more than I liked, because I always liked to be the guy that was underestimated. And I never used to like that pressure.
So all of a sudden now everyone's expecting you
Yeah,
to be the one
and
to make
for a good
money on
6
events.
months after that, I kind of, I didn't do very well. I remember that.
What actually happened? So after this this spread with this young lady over here, what happened? So you say after those 6 months, it's just more people approaching you? Or?
Yeah, well, I moved to, also I moved to Canada at the time. I lived in Montreal. So moving to Montreal kind of unsettled me a little bit. Moving to a new
'Cause
office.
that's a big environment change.
Yeah, it was a big move.
It's something I speak to Bogdan a lot, is sometimes underestimating the cognition, the ecosystem of where you gain your information, just the certain noises, the certain people that you hear flows from.
Yeah.
And when you do that shift, you are plugging yourself out of that extended brain that you have.
Your natural support mechanisms, yeah. So yeah, it took me a good, as I say, a good 6 or 7 months to adjust. And luckily in Montreal, we had a great group, really nice group of lads. And actually they were doing some interesting things. And I think one of the guys there, and it was the first time I saw this, he discovered that the 10-year on non-farms would move certain standard deviations after non-farms based on how much it was out. And it was the first time I'd seen that kind of mechanical, algorithmic type of trading. That was interesting. So I learned a lot from that.
Yeah. So you were on with the new team. So after that, so what happens going forward? Now let's look at a bit of a zoomed out view, and tough runs and how you've handled, because it sounds like you started incredibly well. And every trader I've come across, it's the defining moments on when they have to almost literally go on walkabout, or they're having a tough period or a tough moment or a tough year. Can you explain your first tough year that you ever and whether could you short circuit what the reasons were potentially? Was a change of routine, lifestyle, markets, volatility, yourself, and what you did to overcome it?
Yeah, so I can take you back a little bit. So 2007, 2008 was my best year by a mile. On the financial crisis. 2009 came and the markets bottomed and they kind of went flat almost, but the volatility that I'd been used to for 2 years all of a sudden stopped for whatever reason. So that year I remember quite well. It was the first time I'd seen the market go from one extreme to the other, because prior to that, the trade in the markets have been quite fluid, and the rise of futures and the volumes, but after 2008 something changed almost, and it was weird. So 2009 I didn't do very well. I made money, but it wasn't a good year. And then I remember thinking, wow, something really changed here, like it's weird, and it took me a while to understand what. Fast forward to we had the European banking crisis, so the market went back to 2008 style. I had my second best year that year. Then 2012 hits, and it was the same experience as 2009. All of a sudden, interest rates went to zero in Europe and in America, pretty much. And all of a sudden, 2012 to 2014, 15, it was the worst trading conditions I think I'd ever seen. And everything I'd done prior to that date, 2012, was wrong. You had to almost rip up your entire playbook and start again. And 2012 was my first down year. I lost 7 figures that year. And
so that's now 13 years in your career. You haven't actually had a down year until that year.
That year. And that hit me really hard.
Especially if you've never had, because we have one trader on our floor who actually never made money in the first 6 to 7 years of his career, and because he has his 7-figure years, but when he has a losing day, a losing month, he has incredible resilience because he was just trained being a loser for such a long period of time that eventually when he became a winner, it was losing runs, so as opposed to someone. I always worry for the grad who starts really well at the beginning of his career, because I always know that there'll be a period that will come knocking on his door, and how he reacts to that if he hasn't really trained in that arena. So for someone like you, that must have been quite a big shock. Used to make
Yeah, it was
money
horrendous.
every single year.
Yeah, it was horrible. And I remember, actually, 2012 was the year, I think, personally, futures trading changed completely. MF Global was a clearer that I used, and that bank went under. And it took down a lot of futures traders at the time. And I don't know whether that contributed, but I know for sure that algorithmic trading increased exponentially from that kind of era, that kind of year. And the market's changed completely. So I had to reinvent myself pretty much. And it took me 2 or 3 years to do it.
And that reinvention part, because there were all the chatters, the algos are taking over, but there was a new school of traders who were only born in that period. They only understood that period.
That's right.
Who were able to just say, okay, this is low vol. Maybe I'm not a one market specialist, which a lot of traders preceding that were. You're either Bund trader, FTSE trader, DAX trader. And so if you were an experienced trader coming out of the global financial crisis, European crisis, and then into 2012 and the bond volatility crash, is if you've made a lot of money, was my question, if you've made a lot of money, isn't it harder to reinvent yourself because you know the effort that's required?
Yeah, it was tough. As I say, I had 2 down years, 2012, 2013, 2014 flat, literally small up. And then after that, I was fine. But yeah, it took me, as I say, it took me 3 years to kind of get to grips with it, reinvent what I was doing. I took up a new hobby at the time. I took up jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, Andy mentioned,
yeah.
we have a jiu-jitsu. He said at the time when he ran into you, you were purple belt at the time, which he is now.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, what are you now?
No, I had to stop because
you stopped at purple.
My wrist. Yeah,
Okay.
I got to brown,
yeah.
but my wrist went and I couldn't grip anymore, so I kind of had to stop. But I think doing something like that really helped me. I was reinventing my whole self because I'd never done a martial art before. So I guess doing something outside of work helped me reinvent myself in work as well. And we moved from Canada to London, back to London in 2014. And again, that was part of the reinvention because I was conscious that I needed a new change, a new environment. So I guess that kind of all kind of went into the reinvention, and I changed the way I traded. So yeah, I stopped looking at correlations. That was one thing I stopped doing.
Yeah, I wanted to just speak, and I think Bogdan's probably got his brain spinning there, is the reinvention part using, especially if you're an experienced trader who's now undergoing an environment that's completely changing, they're taking, Bogdan uses the adjacent possible, using a completely other hobby in this instance, skill set of learning something from you. So if you're an experienced trading that's needing to reinvent yourself, taking on another hobby can actually help support the reinvention of the core skill set because you're having to learn something else for the first time completely.
Yeah.
So just wanting to, from a learning mechanic perspective, that's quite a powerful, I think, tool to use when you're trying to reinvent yourself.
I agree. Yeah, it really helped me actually. And I've done it a few times, that reinvention outside, to help reinvent trading over the last 10 years, I'd say. So it's helped a lot.
So now, so then post 2015, the reinvention happens, and now you're approaching the market in what way?
So now I kind of adapted to more event trading. So prior to that, I was doing a lot of correlation trading, as I said, which worked for 13 years. And then it stopped because the algorithms figured out that, we can do that quicker. And if someone's doing it, we can push them out. So I went more into event trading and more fundamental trading.
Which was kind of where you were birthed.
Which is where I was birthed. Yeah. So I went back to the beginning. And those areas, the only area where the algorithms kind of, where you couldn't compete was on the economic numbers because obviously they had the the algorithm set so when the number came out, it would quickly trade. You couldn't compete against that. But the unexpected news was where I could, and that was kind of my focus. And I did really well on the referendum night, Brexit.
Brexit, yes.
In 2016. I had it all mapped out. What counties, what seas, affected the vote. And when Sunderland came out, I smashed the pound, and the pound went down I think about 500 or 600 points in a second.
So your fundamentals. So let's talk about your fundamental side and your fundamental prep. So it seems like you that night of the Brexit's actually when Axia was born.
Oh, okay.
Was actually we started a week before that, and that night I remember the risk manager saying, "Hey, the guys are all in on the opening strategy." So after the events of the night, and then trading the Eurex Open, and it was important. I think if those strategies never worked out, we might be in a different situation, to where we are now today. But your prep, so it seems like you deeply prepare for events. And does that go for today, for the central banks? What's your approach, for example, preparing for a central bank? What's your approach for preparing some geopolitical crisis or an OPEC meeting? Is that, do you have a hardcore process?
Everything I do in life, I prepare. Everything, every aspect of a decision, a plan, I map it out in my mind or on paper, and I have a plan for it. So every eventuality. So from a trading point of view, I had every eventuality mapped out in front of me, just with a pencil and a piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean it's the most powerful tool.
Exactly.
The
exactly.
two of those. So now,
and as a trader, it's massive to be prepared. Obviously, especially if you're an event trader, you need to know the facets of what is coming out, why it's coming out, what it's going to move, how it's going to move, when it's going to move. Yeah, you have to be ready for that.
So we explained your now. How do you you explain the key stages of your career? Over the past it's now what 24 years almost. Almost a quarter of a decade.
Yeah.
What is your motivation today for trading versus the early days?
Um,
And over the last 5-6 years, what has been the motivation? Because you probably could have, after 2010 or the global financial crisis, the European, you could probably handsomely retired and put your legs up and gone to the countryside.
Yeah.
What's kept you going, and what's the motivating force today compared to before, which was your mother and the game, and what's it now?
I love it.
Yeah.
It's and this is where it comes back to the game scenario, I guess. For me, it's a game.
Yeah.
I love games. I like backgammon. I like chess. I love that game aspect of it. And
So you can retire on a Greek island and hang out with the old Greek guys.
hang out with the old guys playing backgammon. That would be cool.
Yeah.
They'd probably whip my ass, but it'd be cool. But I enjoy that kind of stuff, and it's a hobby.
So just the game is what motivates you. It keeps the Alzheimer's at bay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
I can't imagine what else I would do, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I can probably say that for the majority of traders over here.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to Q&A probably in 5 minutes. I just got a few more other questions. Can you explain some of the people that have been influential for you in your career and why? At the beginning, obviously Magnus employed me, and the guys I worked with initially were probably influential in what not to do and how not to be. So in terms of who did I look at who made a difference, I read Market Woods' books, and I respected the guys in there and learned a lot, and especially in terms of their psychologies. And understanding, what drove them and stuff. That was cool. In terms of traders, I look up to. I love the story of the Bank of England, like George Soros, how he broke the Bank of England. That is a trade that I would totally be into. I respect more the trades than it's the trades that make sense to me. That kind of trade. And
watching that movie, The Big Short, blurry, that was cool. You know, that was a great trade. So
it's a trades. So
I like the trades rather than the people.
So which trades within our industry, and this may be, which trades in our industry that you've heard have been great trades?
There was a kid called Laurie Inman.
Yeah.
And I still speak to Laurie today, and he did a really good trade once. He did a trade on the ECB. Monitor closely.
Yes, I remember.
So he was like me, picked up a pattern. I didn't pick up that one, but he picked up that one, and it was, if he says monitor closely, it means he's hiking rates next month. And he picked up on that, and I think he made, really good money on that.
Yeah, and I remember.
And I thought that was a good trade.
Yeah, it's the first time when I came in the industry. It was 2004 as well. I sat next to Laurie Inman when he went from 50 bobbles to 2,000 bobbles in about 6 months. Before that, it took him probably about a year to get to 50 bobbles, and then there was that accelerated move. But it was the first time understanding that central banks have a coding language. Like before that, we didn't know that they actually have a method of coding, communicating to the market. So if you picked up on that,
that's right.
There was.
I think it was the first time.
Yeah. And
he picked up on that, and again, it comes back to pattern recognition.
What about the last 5 years? You've heard any other trades that you've been?
Last 5 years.
Maybe one of Henry's trades or Joe's trades.
I'd say the last three. Well, the last 5 years, I'd say I definitely
kept to yourself.
Keep more to myself.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't really hear much. Obviously, I heard about the oil boys. When that went negative.
That's a few $100 million.
Yeah, which I don't know if they're going to get, to be honest. But that was interesting.
Locals can't do well, unfortunately.
Well, yeah.
They're not allowed to do that well.
There's a reason, and normally a corrupt reason if someone does. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's okay with anyway. The exchanges aren't watching this now. So we spoke about how the markets have changed versus the early days, how you've evolved and adapt. What do you believe makes a great trader? Like, what are all the attributes that you can see within yourself, things that you would have liked to have? What makes that great trader?
From what I've seen and from what I've witnessed and from what I've experienced, I would say it comes down to definitely patience, and not so much in the early days, but now for sure, patience is one of the biggest things that you can have, because some days you can be waiting, especially if you're an event trader. And this was again part of my reinvention. I wasn't a patient person because I was so used to being in and out so quick. I mean, just to give you an idea, there was a day in 2008 where I did 100,000 round trips, and I was literally in and out, clicking 1,000 lot clips like it was like for fun.
What were you on the night before?
What's that?
There's a bit of speed going on.
Oh yeah. So I was very quick, always in and out. Blah 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 blah. So part of my reinvention was to learn to be patient, and nowadays I think patience is one of the biggest traits you can have. Being flexible, being able to adjust your thinking very quickly, being able to recognise a pattern when it works, when it doesn't, being able to adjust your size, to adjust to conditions, very important, because conditions nowadays change very quickly. And recent example. Conditions last year, phenomenal for a trader. Very similar to how it was in the early days. Unexpected comments, unexpected news, blah, blah, blah.
Inflation happening again.
Hit here, hit there, sources, everything. And then you go into January and it's flat, right? And then all of a sudden, some of the things that we were following stops working, especially in the last few weeks, dead markets. So you have to adjust again and be flexible and go back to being patient.
No,
those are the three biggest things I can think of: flexibility, patience, and being able to adjust and adapt to market conditions and patterns.
So this might be a difficult question for you to answer. What would you advise young guys starting their career? Unfortunately, you started so well.
Yeah.
Is there advice you can give to people, such as is an important? I know when we speak to John, is John here? We'll actually answer that one tomorrow. What we were speaking about earlier. But what advice would you give to junior traders starting in today's markets trying to cut their cloth and buy them some rosé for
I think it's really important to be able to distinguish, first of all, what type of trader you are. I mean, there's times when I go into longer term trading, which then messes up my short term trading because I've got a long term view and then it crosses into short term and it doesn't work. So you can't mix and match. You have to kind of, during a particular period like this now, which I think we're going into, I think being short term is not going to be as good as being long term. So you have to be more long term and patient. So I would say, you know, being able to adjust like that in your mind is very important. And knowing what type of trader you are. So are you a long term trader? Are you a spread trader? Or are you just in it for the events? Are you in it for technicals? Pick one and master that and then go on to the next one. That was kind of what advice I would give. Yeah. Don't try and do everything at once.
Piecemeal engineering.
Piecemeal engineering, yeah.
So before I open up, I have one last question that I've now forgotten. So what we'll do is we'll start Q&A. We'll start from the floor, and then I'll remember it, and then I'll ask. So we'll start from the floor. So the guys who are remote, you can write in the Discord group. My question was, any other notable trades that you learned, whether your biggest loss, what you learned from it. So you know, your biggest loss, what was the reason? What was the psychology behind that? And then any other, you know, notable big trade there.
Okay, so let's start with the good stuff. Let's start with the big trade. So the good trade was my best trade. I had two really big days in 2000. And as a trader, I'm not sure I've never been of the view being consistent is necessarily a good thing. Like some trading companies, some trading managers, traders, they like to be consistently up small amounts or big amounts if you can. I mean, that's great. But, you know, most guys like to be plodders, consistent. I've never bought into that. I've more been of the view that 5 or 6 trading days a year can define your whole year. And if you get those big trades right, then your account over the years will be a lot bigger than the guys that plod along. So one of my big trades was, as I said, in 2008, there were 2 days. One day when the stop went off in the short end, because at the time LIBOR was blowing up and it was affecting the front months in the Eurodollar. And the Eurodollar was almost broken, I guess, a bit like the Sonia was last year. And there was one day where a stop went off and the front month Eurodollar crashed about 110 fat ticks. And I bought, I can't remember how much I bought now. I know how much I made that day, but I bought pretty much 10 ticks off the low.
So you bought a collapsing.
Yeah, and I think I ran it up 80 fat ticks, I think,
Wow.
after that. But yeah, I made a lot of money that day.
What was that day?
I think I made 5 million,
Okay.
in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the other day was when the first TARP vote,
I remember that.
so Troubled Asset Relief Program. So that was the first time they voted on it in the Congress. And I had worked out beforehand, obviously, how many votes needed to pass and the scenarios with which it wouldn't pass. And when it crossed the threshold, I knew it hadn't passed. But the market was sat there, so no one else had worked it out. So I sold 1,000 mini S&P and again made like 3 mil in a few minutes.
I remember one of my friends who was trading the top. I can't remember which side, but he was up 2 million on the top, and within 2 seconds he was stopped out 1.5 million.
Oh god.
Yeah, it went and then white box the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the good stuff, but the bad stuff, I think there was one particular day. It didn't end up bad, but it could have.
It ended up.
It was.
So this is it almost ended up bad.
This was almost a career ender, almost.
Okay.
So it was during the flash crash.
Okay.
And at the time, it was the night of the UK general election, the Greek riots, and a guy called Nav. And unbeknownst to me, allegedly he had a system that was spoofing the market, and the market was very volatile due to these Greek riots that were going on, and there was amongst the European debt crisis, and there was a lot going on. So the S&P had already come off, quite a bit. So I started to buy it, and my trade idea was, when the Greek police start firing tear gas, you're going to have a washdown, because for some bizarre reason everyone was watching the TV in Greece and what was going on there. And I thought to myself, when they start firing tear gas, there's going to be a blip down and then it's going to bounce, and that'll be the low. Because it shouldn't really be following Greece, let's be honest. So it flushed down and I bought, and it flushed down again and I bought again, and that was when the stop went off. And when the stop went off, in the beginning of the stop, I then went into the 10-year, because I knew straight away it was a stop. So I went and sold the 10-year, thinking that the 10-year would, once the stop had passed and it bounced, the 10-year would then come off. And I sold the euro. I had every worst position you can think of over that kind of stop. And my P&L went down, I think, 16 mil. And very quickly, it was moving like a mil at a time, to be honest. And I remember I had the TV on, and this was in 2 minutes.
Did you get a cup of tea?
This was all in a 2-minute window. And I remember Jim Cramer coming on TV on CNBC saying, he was white himself, and he said, Procter & Gambler's just gone at like 5 cents or whatever. And he said, this is wrong, inaccurate, buy everything. And that's why I didn't get out. So I didn't get out, and my P&L went...
the Cramer worked.
Yeah, Cramer for once worked. And I didn't get out, and within, that was 2 minutes, 16 mil down, and then 2 minutes later, the P&L was going up just as equally as it went down. And I think I finished the day down 20 grand.
What were you thinking, sorry, in that moment when you saw 16 million down? What was your first, did you have a thought?
No, I didn't really. It was really bizarre. I don't think I had a chance to, because it was only afterwards, actually, that it kind of hit me what had happened. During that moment, I was pretty cool about it, because it didn't feel real. Like, it just felt it was wrong. Like it was malfunctioned almost. So I just didn't recollect.
You don't have processing time. Is that kind of what you're
possibly,
saying? Like,
possibly. I mean, equally not realizing how much you're up and not caring as much. Not looking at the numbers and caring, and having that. I think on the downside, I had the same kind of feeling on the downside. It was more the trades that I had on that it was broken. It wasn't right. It's going to come back. So that was kind of what I was thinking, I guess. But afterwards, I had a bottle of wine after, and I was thinking to myself, fuck, you idiot. That could have been bad, Yeah.
No risk managers call you, they just...
Yeah, actually he did after, and he...
So I remember the old days when
I don't think he had a chance, but he might have done, I wasn't answering, but yeah.
When I started, I remember each trader, we all had a telephone on our... I don't know if you remember, we had a telephone on our desk, and that was for the risk manager to call us if we're doing something bad or we're on side. And I remember I remember actually Lee Gibbs, whenever the phone would ring, he would throw the phone off the floor and not listen, and the risk manager would have to come outside. So what was your relationship with the phone on the desk?
I'll be honest with you, I was always very good with the risk managers. I was never one to dismiss them or anything. I respected their role. Not that I ever agreed with their role. And 9 times out of 10,
they're trying their best.
I know, yeah. And 9 times out of 10, when the risk guy would come out, it would either be the high or the low of the move.
Yeah, I bet
so that's
always
the case. But you can't help that.
It's the curse.
But I think in your mind, to be honest with you, going forward, and again, the first out that you think of is normally the best out. When you prolong an out, obviously, that's 9 times out of 10, it works out a lot worse for you.
I think that's a great little phrase, the first, because normally that's kind of your intuition or
your intuition,
speaking.
yeah.
And normally that first intuition is usually that intelligent at speaking from experience,
Yeah.
and it's your ability to listen to that intuition.
Yeah, and it's your inefficient mind, your ego, that stops you getting out on that first out. And could be greed, it could be perfectionism, thinking, well, my P&L is going to be down more, or I'm going to lose what I've made, or, perfectionism, ego. But the first out, generally, in my experience, is the best out.
Yeah. I think, I could listen to a lot of these stories. I mean, you've got so many stories. So we could hear, just hearing these trade stories. I saw Morris's eyes going when he's riding the 16 million. So,
But the actual loss was, I think I lost, in one day, I lost about 800 grand.
so that's the biggest.
That's the biggest loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that
that was in...
Was that a first out?
No, that was a really
Third out.
arrogant, ego-driven, not caring mindset. That was in 2008, having had some really big days. I stayed at home one day and I logged on from home, and I remember being a bit cocky, a bit arrogant, and it was the first time I think I'd ever experienced that level of arrogance. And I thought I knew the market better than what it was. And I didn't get out and kept averaging. And yeah, I finished that day down 800 grand. And that was a real eye opener.
Was that just trading?
I never traded from home after that,
Okay.
during that period.
And was that day just trading?
Just trading stupid.
Yeah.
Thinking I knew the market better than
Yeah.
I did. Just pure arrogance, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was, they say, from the book Thinking Fast and Slow, generally you're at your most brittle and the quality of your decisions are at their weakest when we're on the more golden, confident run that we go on.
Yeah.
We become, our ability to ask, powerful questions, quality questions, well-audited questions,
Yeah.
become less and less the better the run. So, one of our top technical traders, he always knows, and he always, he always says, normally over the past years, my biggest down days of the year are a result of a very good run first.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah,
so,
and
so
I think
that.
it's probably ego
Yeah.
that drives it. But it never used to, and it still doesn't, to be honest. I sometimes like to lose money because it allows you that reset, that reinvention, that there's something wrong here and it's not working. It's time to change. And sometimes you need to lose money to realise that, unfortunately. But that's just the way it is.
Just have to learn how to.
That's the cost of doing business, as they say.
Yeah, just have to first know how to make money in the first place.
Well, you have to have some money to lose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so questions. Usually the guys can be quite shy, but hopefully today they ask questions. So who has a question to start off? And the guys on the remote. Joe, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do actually.
Yeah.
Kind of two questions. In regards to the 2012 to 2015 window, where you said you were kind of struggling and others were kind of, I guess, dying off, what would you say was the differentiating qualities between the ones who made it and the ones who failed? And secondly, in regards to your purpose, I guess, originally you said it's to do with your mother and like riding and I guess just trying to be, to stand out for her. Like, how did you change that over time? Was there? I know you say by the end of it you enjoyed the gaming and the kind of the feeling of it, but was there a conscious shift saying, I'm now doing this for another reason, or I've kind of satisfied that original goal? Was there a point to that?
So I'll just repeat the question first. So the question from Joe is just asking in the first question. What was the first question again?
The losing period.
Yes, so from 2012 to Alzheimer's. 2012 to 2015, what was the reason for those who failed versus those who were able to survive and adapt? That was question one. And then question two, the motivating force and how you created that shift, and what was that shift?
Was there a conscious shift?
Yeah.
Was there recognition to changing that?
So that losing period, 2012, 2015, as you rightly said, it was an industry shift almost. Like the whole market changed, the whole trading industry changed. Actually, it was akin, I think, to the shakeout from the floor to the screen. It was very similar. So the new guys that came on board 2012, 13, they obviously saw a new market. a more algorithmic generated market. So those guys kind of obviously adapted well because they didn't know any better. The guys that stuck around, I think like a lot of guys left during that period. A lot of guys quit. And the guys that hung around, I think, had to re-engineer what they were doing and readjust and stop doing the old habits that they were doing. And
What were those habits, like, just to...
I think, as I said before, it was a lot of what we did back then was correlations. And a lot of the guys that I started with that stuck around all them years, they were good at recognizing the correlations, the patterns. And I guess the old patterns and correlations that existed no longer existed or didn't work as well as they did. I think that kind of adjustment was...
And those correlations, I remember those, they were also binary as opposed to like the way correlations are traded today, which, you know, we've seen Demetrius in his videos of execution, is the correlations those days, you literally, you know, say something goes bid, it was almost like a 1-for-1, whereas now there might be a lag, it might happen later, there's almost a second, third degree kind of correlation effect.
And also, I think the biggest shift I saw amongst these guys was moving on to the events trading as opposed to figure trading and as I said, correlation trading. We all kind of shifted to more event-based and more unexpected news and that kind of
So you kind
stuff.
of shifted as well, I'm sorry, you kind of shifted as well, because I know you said
We all did.
you're incredibly prepared for like the known events.
Yeah.
How did you shift to like trade the unknown events? Like, did you change your strategy, or did you just kind of...
I mean, I always traded like that anyway, but over a period, especially at the beginning more so, but there was a long period where the unexpected events just fell into, you know, the normal day-to-day trading. But now, the more you have more of a focus on those, and you kind of went, they kind of made more, they were more of a big deal because that kind of would have been your money for the day, right? So now it means more. Whereas in the old days, you would have unexpected events all the time, but it was kind of run of the mill. Like it would kind of work in with the other stuff you were doing. But now you will focus more on the unexpected events, for example. So the guys, you know, kind of shifted to that kind of style of trading, but a lot left. So you know, it was a big shakeout of the industry. And then after that, the other question was so I've had a few stages in my life where obviously having kids kind of changed a lot of my perception of risk, you know, because I didn't want to take as much risk as I used to. I think actually, and it coincided, funny enough, with having my second kid. I've got two children. 2011 was my second kid, and coinciding with 2012 and the shift in the market, I reduced my size quite substantially. And I had to pretty much because of the market conditions anyway. I mean, nowadays you can't do 1,000 lot in the S&P and expect to get out quickly, you know, whereas pre-2012, you know, I was doing 2,000 lot S&P positions. So, you know, shifting that dynamic, you know, and my driver, well, obviously being more risk averse because of kids and also because of market conditions, and wanting to prolong my career, I guess, because I enjoy it so much. You know, I don't want to be in a position where I stop enjoying it. And I think losing, you know, big amounts and having big swings, which I wasn't afraid of pre-2012, it kind of, you know, it wasn't interesting anymore. It wasn't something I wanted to do. So that was a big, and now obviously providing, you know, and enjoying it. And I think the minute I stop enjoying it is probably when my drive would end.
What you're speaking about your size there, I think people are always interested. So you've traded 2,000 S&P.
Pre-2012, yeah.
2,000 S&P. Bunds, what are the biggest positions? You got
2,000.
2,000 bunds. Your rivals?
5,000.
What else? Oil?
I had an 8,000 lot on once in the euro dollar during the hurricane. Katrina.
Katrina.
Yeah.
So you had 8,000 there.
I was offside a bit, but they came back.
Of course it came back. Okay. Okay. Next question. I'm going to look ourselves up.
Would you be able to summarise again just So like pre-2008, 2012, traded a particular type of way at certain things you did, and then you said it started getting quite tough after 2008, and then
After 2012.
2012. And then so you started adjusting, you started being more patient and selective with things that you
Yeah.
did, compared to like how, and you said you started coming back more to event-based type of trading and things
Yeah.
you did earlier on. But just to kind of recap that evolution from the beginning of your career, how your style started to then, how it started and then changed to where it is now.
Yeah, I mean, psychologically, in the early days, obviously I had nothing to lose, right? So I was never as scared of taking on bigger size, bigger positions, bigger trades. The money I was making, I didn't, as I said earlier in the interview, never used to faze me. So, leading up to 2008, I was in the best possible position in 2008 to take advantage of it because I built my account up. I had enough money not to worry. I had good size. The condition, it was the perfect storm, 2008 for me. After 2008, obviously things started to change. 2011 it came back because we had the European banking crisis, but nowhere near as good as what it was, but it came back. But from 2012, I mean, that was it was the biggest shift, I think. From a psychological point of view, I wanted to be more risk averse because I could see in the market there was no way I could put these positions on and A, get out, and B, make money because it was all of a sudden it became very thin and illiquid. So that was from a psychological aspect, becoming more risk averse, I guess. And I guess having kids probably pushed that as well. And also the market, the way it was trading, like it was a completely different market. It was so bizarre, that experience from 2012 to 2015, seeing a completely new industry. There was a documentary actually called Flawed on YouTube, and it was about floor traders who went onto the screens and how they all did their ass basically in Chicago. And watching that documentary in 2012-13, I could totally get what they were going through because I felt that same feeling in 2012-13.
I felt like a whole new skill.
A whole new skill had gone. Yeah, my whole job was redundant basically. And I had to reinvent, as I say. And actually, one of the things I haven't mentioned, but that I'd say nowadays you have to reinvent yourself a lot more. I think it comes down to AI and the fact that AI now is evolving trading so much and it's constantly learning what we're doing. You have to reinvent yourself all the time, I think. But there are still areas where the algos can't compete. And last year was a great example of it. And it comes back to what we said, event trading. Event trading is still the only area, I think, unexpected events is still the only area where the algos can't beat us. So that will always be there. So if you can master the event trading, I think you'll always be all right.
And I'll ask a question remotely, and then we'll go. We'll spring back. I just wanted to add on that, and there's actually a question on AI by Roman afterwards, and myself and Bogdan have done a lot of work on how humans versus AI, and how humans can think in narrative and story, and humans cannot think in causal reasoning. That's one of the edges. But the other aspect is we have some incredibly successful and big profile technical traders, which requires more context and those layers which humans can also do. Where it comes to that speed, that those quick correlations, that scrap game is where a lot of the algos have compressed that edge. So I have one of the questions, and I'm looking forward to your answer on this. This is from Bill. Not sure if, but I'd love to know if you ever traded at the same time as the flipper, a notorious spoofer scalper on the German bonds. I think he was a Swiss guy based out of Ireland. Just curious. Just want to know. What was his name? Mr. Paul?
Rotter.
Rotter, yes.
Yeah, of course I traded during that period. Yeah, I was like trying to outdo booth.
Yeah. Can you explain what you used to see, what used to happen? I mean, I remember him. I think I figured him out, and the next time, training him, the next time he's pulled the whole book below me. And,
Yeah, I mean,
for a start.
I'm amazed. I don't know if he ever got done for what he was doing. I'm pretty sure he did. But I'm pretty sure he got done for something. Yeah, because he stopped very quickly out of nowhere. So he wasn't doing that dissimilar things to what Nav was doing.
Yeah.
He would build the book up, and it would reach a profile point or a level, and he would put max size on the offer and pull the book, and then flip it. So that's kind of what he was doing, and you just have to. I mean, I think I stopped trading Bund during that period, to be honest, because I had no interest. I could see what he was doing, and it's just, what's the point?
Yeah, and you're probably trading too much size to worry about that type of trade.
I mean, sometimes you could take him on, like sometimes you could take him out knowing that you would have to get out. And
would you ever try and participate in that?
yeah, I mean, there was time if the momentum was behind you,
Yeah.
you kind of knew that he was Well, you kind of figured that he was spoofing it. So yeah, you would take him out to the whole lot.
Yeah.
And that was before he built the fill or kill system. I think he built that. But yeah, you would take him out and go in again and push it up and test his limits,
Yeah.
But yeah, he used
What
to
was
take
that?
him sometimes.
2004, 2005?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2000.
But it only lasted. It didn't last very long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember those days.
Yeah.
I actually tried to call him, and so I'm trying to remember. We actually, I think I can't. My mind's go, but I remember trying to call him because I was really interested in his flipping. Okay. Any more? Yes, Elliot.
You mentioned a good trade for a trader was the patience aspect
Yeah.
of it. If you could expand on that, 'cause obviously, while you're in a trade in the square and offside, patience could be the killer, but then obviously other side, so you can make the most of trades when you're patient. So
Yeah.
a trade or
Actually, okay, so when I say patience, I mean more waiting for a trade more than when you're in a trade. So waiting for the perfect trade, the perfect storm, if you like, that requires a lot of patience. Waiting for an event, to come out requires patience, because some days you could be sitting there's no events, there's nothing coming out, there's no news moving the markets. So not putting on boredom trades, I guess, is where the patience comes in. When you're in a trade, I mean, it depends what type of trade it is, right? Like if you're in a trade from an unexpected event where you can make quick money, it doesn't pay to be patient. You want to get in and out, be the first one in, be the first one out, sometimes, because if you're not the first one out, you might not be able to get out. Then other trades, like if you're more doing it for a fundamental reason, if the story has changed. So I think of trades in stories sometimes. So the narrative, what's the story behind the market? What's moving the markets? And if something changes in that narrative and the market is mispriced, and actually probably the best example in the last few days was the short end pricing rate cuts, right? Now the narrative kind of changed, and I didn't pick up on it straight away when non-farms came out, and then the services PMI came out. The narrative changed. People stopped thinking they were going to cut rates at the end of the year. I mean, it's a bit ridiculous in my view that it changed just on two figures. It should have adapted before that, but it did, and it kept going over the weekend, right, to where it is today. So if you put a trade on because of a story that you believe in, then obviously you have to be patient sometimes for it to pay off. And sometimes you have to wear a bit of pain, yeah, but you should know that if you're doing a longer term trade on a story, then you should know, that's probably when you should know where your stop is and where you're going to get out for a profit, as opposed to when it's an unexpected event, you're in and out so quick sometimes you don't even think about stops or anything like that,
You mentioned as well, you feel like we're coming into a more long-term kind of trading environment as opposed to short-term.
Yeah, I think the unexpected events that drove us last year, there was so many of them, and the figures were moving around, and it was so good. But I think because when you reach, a peak or a trough in interest rates, which is kind of what we're approaching now, there's going to be a flat period. There always is. Like in 24 years, I've seen a dozen of them. And there's a period where you have to kind of adjust to that. And we're in that you should be in that adjustment phase now, basically, is what I'm saying, because the markets will become a bit more, you know, the ECB sources won't be moving it as much, or the ECB speakers. Well, we had 3 this morning that came out very hawkish. I mean, if that had been in December, November, you know, you would have been able to sell whatever best price was in your IBOR and make money instantly. But now it's a bit, you know, it's not a surprise anymore, right? So you have to adjust to that. Whenever we, as I say, we're reaching a peak in interest rates, so you have to adjust. And hopefully the peak won't last as long as what I expect it to, because I expect we're probably going to stay a bit high for an extended period of time. And hopefully it won't be, and we can start thinking about rate cuts. And then the market will move around again. But during that period, when it does become flat, that's when it's good to look at other things like longer term positions, look at shares, equity trading, look at options. You know, you have to, again, readjust, replan, rethink, do something different. You know, don't be afraid to do that.
Okay, I have a question from Roman. Can we still, in these complex times, be both good analysts and good traders at the same time, or do we need for future to specialize and split into teams?
I mean, obviously, a good trader is a good analyst, right? Like, you know, you have to be able to analyze quickly, or not so quickly sometimes, what's going on and how it affects the market. So, I mean, that's paramount. In terms of team-based trading, was it?
Yeah, you know,
I've never worked
split into teams.
I mean, I've never worked in a team, so I mean, I've worked amongst guys, and I've always helped out with if someone asked me a question, I've always answered it or given my view, listened to their views, you know. But I've never actually traded in a team, so I'm not very good at. I'm not probably a great team trader, team player. I'm more of a introvert.
Okay. Any other questions that we have from the floor? Henry?
We've obviously heard that you're not afraid of size. Does that come solely sort of based on your own sort of conviction and belief in your sort of ability to trade?
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that is almost like, I guess you mentioned like the first out is sort of where you go wrong, but it's how do you balance sort of a conviction on a trade that isn't going your way to then, you know, sort of either holding it through what is, you know, for example, where it felt wrong for the 16 million to be sort of essentially on your screen, to writing it back sort of only a small loser, or then, you know, being like, no, I'm just wrong here, you know. So how do you balance sort of putting that much size on with your levels of conviction, but then also, you know, then just being like, oh, I'm wrong, you know, it's quite quick.
I mean, the size management question comes down to market conditions, right? Like in the older trading days, obviously our sizes were bigger because the market was different then. You know, it was fatter bid and offers, and there was, you know, there wasn't necessarily more volume, intraday volume, but there wasn't that, you know, that you see with the algos, right? So obviously your risk management had to change, as I've said, after 2012. Your whole trade management, you know, your size adjusted. So you adjust to trading conditions, and you know, in terms of when you're offside. Scaling out, or even when you want to go into a trade, scaling in. You know, again, it depends on why you're offside, I think. If the story's changed, then the first out will be the best, because, you know, you kind of know if something's shifted. Sometimes you don't, and sometimes you have to see pain before you realise that the story's changed, right? And that's when you should get out. And I think it's that feeling, I've always had that feeling, I kind of know I'm wrong sometimes before I get out. And, you know, it's that intuition, I guess. It's hard to explain, to be honest. But, yeah, I mean, some guys, are more mechanical. Some guys look at their P&L, right? I mean, I look at my P&L, but not, I don't have a stop loss in terms of, you know, I don't do anything stupid. But, like, you know, I don't have a percentage I want to lose. You know, no, because I almost feel like if you do have that, then it's almost it can be a magnet. because you think, oh, I've got that much to lose. You should. I personally don't believe in that, and I don't believe in targets either. You should never restrict yourself to a target. Just look to be green on the day, you know, because if you have a target and you reach the target, well then what? You know, don't have a target. You know, make as much as you can, but don't lose as much as you can. That's the advice.
Just have a question from Sean. There are some traders that have an "I will never trade again" list that they'll never touch no matter the conditions regarding specific markets and products. For him, it's the nat gas. Here in the US, it's nicknamed the Widowmaker because sometimes the moves are extreme. Is there a market you'll never trade again or stay away from?
Yeah, definitely. And there's periods of time when I adjust that list, you know, depending on what's going on in the markets. So I go through periods where I would take my limits off of oil, or I would take my limits off the S&P. I didn't trade the S&P for a while. I would, at the moment, what don't I trade at the moment? I don't trade the Shats. I don't trade, what else don't I trade at the moment? I don't trade the Bobble. Definitely don't touch that. What else? I don't trade DAX. I don't really trade the Eurostox. Yeah, I think that's about it at the moment. Yeah.
So that's your
and the
trade
gilt.
list.
Gilt, definitely don't trade that.
Yeah, okay. Especially over BOE.
Yeah, I hate the gilt with a passion. That's like my nemesis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question from the floor? Yeah, no, go,
You
Jeff.
speak about preparation being one of your strongest assets, right? Was there ever a specific trade, it kind of relates to Andy's question as well, where you remember being highly prepared, highly convicted, and it going wrong? And is there a trade that comes to mind where you were unprepared, not that convicted, and it went really well? Have you got two examples?
That's a good one, actually.
So the question, so Joe's just asking, has there ever been, so you do a lot of prep, has there ever been a trade where you prepped really well, been highly convicted, but it hasn't gone right?
Yeah.
And vice versa.
You're not prepared for not that much conviction, and actually you think, fuck, I should have done more size than that.
Good question. Yeah.
That's a really good question, and I'm going to have to think about that one. But yeah, I mean, I don't, as a rule, go into anything without being prepared. So the second part of that, it doesn't happen. But there are periods where you prepare a lot and you don't make as much as what you thought. I mean, there's definitely periods like that. But as a rule, I definitely don't go into anything that I'm not prepared for, and I know every detail of what's coming out. Whether it works as you want it to is another question. But in terms of, yeah, I mean, there was actually recently the ECB Thursday. I prepared for that, and I didn't expect the market to react so dovilishly to it. I think that caught me out a little bit, and I didn't lose a lot of money, but it upset me, and it annoyed me, if you like, because I did prepare for it, and I wasn't expecting that reaction. And obviously, it's come back off now, so, and it pisses you off that, the market didn't see what you were seeing at the time. But yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the beast. And as I said, that's the cost of doing business sometimes. You can be the best prepared guy in the world, but yeah, you might not make as much, or you might not make at all. But I try not to, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say there's many periods where I would say I've lost a lot through being prepared. I just don't make as much, or I don't make, or I'm small down. But I don't generally lose a lot if I'm prepared. If I'm not prepared, which is very rare, probably 1% of my trading career I've probably not been prepared for something, and I've lost money, and that just makes me feel like a complete idiot. More so than being prepared and losing. Being unprepared and losing makes you feel it's the worst feeling ever.
Your means of keeping on top of being prepared.
That's
being unprepared.
Yeah.
Is just a conscious thing, or is it a system you use? How do you, like you said, the answer you gave saying that just never happens being unprepared.
Yeah.
I think most people. I mean, I'm pretty bad for it. My worst periods of trading are always being unprepared.
Yeah. So there you go.
Periods of trading are always being prepared.
So there you go.
For some reason, I don't have a
Consistent.
approach to it. So it's just.
I think it comes down to, I mean, if you ever read any management consulting book, Excellent Pursuit of Excellence, is a good example.
What's his name? Tom?
I can't remember who the
Yeah.
guy who wrote it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it was an old book.
Yes, I
yeah.
remember. Very old.
So one thing that stood out in my
Tom
mind
Peters.
from reading that years and years ago was how you should be prepared for things. You know, you should prepare for an interview. You should prepare for anything in life, any facet really. And trading more so than anything else. I think if you prepare and you've done your best, you've read everything, you can't really be upset if you lose money through being prepared. And I think knowing that in your mind, you want to be prepared, right? So
What do one of the generals said? Maybe being prepared isn't going to win you a war, but not being prepared, you'll definitely lose. And that because also by being prepared, you have something to benchmark yourself afterwards, or what was wrong with your game.
yeah, definitely.
For that. Okay, so I have another. How do you disconnect from Kian? How do you disconnect from the market when the day is done? Are you constantly plugged in one way or another?
Well, as I mentioned, I am constantly plugged in. I'm always reading stuff, what's going on, and listening to podcasts. But I do a lot of exercise, like I'm into fitness. I used to do jiu-jitsu, but now, then I kind of reinvented myself because of my wrist. I couldn't do jiu-jitsu anymore, so I discovered indoor rowing. So I competed indoor rowing, got to a really good standard in indoor rowing. Then went from indoor rowing to, now I'm into this thing called High Rocks. It's a new fitness event that's a competition that's come out. So it's kind of, you run, it could be a CrossFit thing like sled pull or sled push, then you run, and then it's like, anyway, these events are running all around the country. I think it's about a year old. So I've signed up for that as a new reinvention. So I haven't run in a while, so getting back into running was a good challenge. So that's my new reinvention this year. So,
Amazing.
So my event is in May, so we'll see how that goes.
Well,
Anyway, that's I've always treated exercise and sport as part of my job. So it's part of my work ethic to work out and release. And because of that, I've always been religious about it. And it's one of the things I do like all the time.
Oh, that's fantastic. Craig.
So you spoke about how you're big on prep, maybe debrief as well. So I'm curious to hear how do you actually prepare and debrief, and then how's that evolved from when you first started out in your younger days to how you do it now?
I guess like in the earlier days, your sources of information were less, right? Because we never had access to as many news wires as we do today, and the analytics wasn't as good as what it is and readily available. You can Google whatever you want now, right? Or even now it's ChatGPT. So there's no excuse really nowadays for not being prepared because you've got so many ways of doing it. Back in the old days, you had to work at it, and you had to come up with these different, these sources of information. As I said, being prepared is something that's in my, that's my non-negotiable. One of my non-negotiables, like being exercise, non-negotiable.
Yeah, I suppose now the skill is how to separate from the noise. What's important information.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it comes down to market conditions. It comes down to the story, the narrative. What's the story at the moment? How is that affecting the market? There's so many facets that go into it. And in your mind, you have to dissect it, disseminate it, and pick out the sources of information that is relevant. And it's all an ongoing, it's a learning process. It's ongoing, it changes, it adapts. Depends on what's going on.
That other word that Craig said, debrief. I know the older generation, debrief might sound like some voodoo witchcraft, or what is that? Do you do any type of dress down, or at the end of the day, is it just all the head? Do you write anything down? Do you have a process? We have now the Evernote, Notion, digital forms these days. Do you have? I know you've logged so many gazillion hours in your head, and you probably have a very efficient way. Is there anything else you do at the end of the trading day?
One of my favourite, it sounds a bit sad, but one of my favourite times of the trading 24 hours period, I don't trade 24 hours, but during that period of trading, one of my favourite hours is around 7:38. I will have dinner with the family, and then, you know, I'll pop upstairs to my office, and I like to look at what's happened, you know, during the day, and what, you know, and think back in my mind what I did. I don't normally write anything down, but I just like to, you know, replay those, what I did right and what I did wrong. And I normally spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes and just look, you know, just replaying it in my mind and seeing what.
Where you were active, what you could have maybe done better.
I enjoy that. I almost find it quite therapeutic.
So it's religious, almost like a practice.
Yeah. Again, a non-negotiable. I don't generally, unless there's some real news coming out in the evenings after 7:38. I don't generally trade after that period. Although sometimes the 9 p.m. closes, not so much in the equities because that I just find is a lottery, but in the bonds, weirdly, it never used to move much at 9 p.m. But I've noticed recently, especially around quarter ends and month ends, the 9 p.m. is better than the cash close in the bonds. So that's a good tip for anyone. Like watch 9 p.m. on a quarter end or on a month end. The cash close is normally the mover at 8 p.m. But now it's more 9 p.m. weirdly. So that's it, and normally it retraces as well. So don't hold my hand to that fire. But if there's a big move, there is reversion to the mean normally. Yeah, normally. Yeah.
Okay, we'll be plotting that trade next week.
Yeah.
Why not? From Guru, first of all, thank you for your time. Great talk. How did you overcome your impatience? What practices did you adopt, and how long did it take you for you to become patient?
Well, as I said, you know, learning to be patient was part of the reinvention from 2012 to 2015. And it took me a long time to be patient. It took me a long time to learn that skill. And I think taking up jiu-jitsu at the time really helped, because being patient in jiu-jitsu, waiting for the moment to attack, and normally your attack in jiu-jitsu comes from defense. You know, like, so, you know, learning that skill really, doing that sport really helped me.
It's amazing, just these, you know, using alternative spaces, industries, professions, sport that can help assist in your main
big time
core profession. You
big
know,
time.
just because it starts, you know, accessing other portals of the brain. Creativity starts getting, you know, accelerated. When creativity is high, our problem-solving abilities becomes high. We're actually doing a retreat in May in Spain, doing something really funky, which it'll sound too funky. I'll tell you later when we go for dinner. But you should come, actually. It's on the 5th of May, and doing something rather alternative and interesting of how we kind of tap into our deep unconscious. You know, put a torchlight on that, and then bringing that to the surface of our awareness. And
I mean, it's very difficult to do that. You know, it's not something most people can do. You know, actually, I'd say, you know, majority of people can't do it. And it helps, as you said, doing outdoor things away from work helps tap into that, I think, and it makes your mind open up to new possibilities.
And that's what it's all about, opening up to those new possibilities. Yeah. Questions? Is that Jake with the finger up?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
he's a short-end trader.
Oh, cool. Okay.
No, try
to.
What's your idea generation process like? Like you said, you know, event driven a lot of the time, but what would your thought process be for like this week? I know you said you try and think about what's the story. So you just talked about like the cuts being priced back out. That
was a story that I didn't expect it to happen so quick after non-farms. And like, I mean, I look at the SOFA, the SEP contract SOFA. It's come off 37 fat ticks since Thursday night. You know, that's a huge move. And fair enough, I think you would never have sold it Thursday night, not after what Powell had said, and especially after the dovish reaction to the ECB. So your first chance to sell it was on unfarms. Well, you didn't get on the first 15, probably 12 to 15 ticks of it because it was the algo. But then selling it after that was tricky. So you kind of missed your window almost. So, and then you would have had to be short over the weekend, which generally I don't like to be. So, you know, it's So that story I missed. But there are, coming up with those stories is one thing I am good at. I'm able to, and it comes down to my earlier days of trading. Pattern recognition, correlations. I can recognise a story when it's evolving in the early part of it, and normally come up with a trading strategy to kind of make the most of it. One good example actually was in February, after the Russia went in. I kind of was straight away that I woke up at like 2 a.m. I was awoken by I'm on this WhatsApp chat, and if this alarm goes off on this WhatsApp chat, it means something really fucked up and bad has happened. It's like the Death Star noise. My wife hates it. But when it goes off in the middle of the night, that normally is me jumping out of bed and going to the trading terminal. And it went off that night and obviously ran downstairs. And straight away I had to come up with the story and think of the implications for markets and where it would be and what it would do. And obviously at the very beginning, you never thought about the implication of inflation you did from the oil, but then you thought of it weirdly. So like my inclination at the time was to be long the short end, because I thought, with this kind of uncertainty being generated, they're not going to be hiking rates as quick as what, the market expects. So I think I bought the Sonia and ran it for, a week or two. But then after that, I quickly recognised that inflation was going to take off because of what had happened and the hit on supply chains, and then I flipped it and sold it and ran it back down. So you kind of have to recognise what the story is and the implication.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and not be afraid to trade it, I guess.
So you'll
have the confidence.
You'll hold something for a few weeks until.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes. But normally it's long as opposed to being short. I don't know why I've always had a fear of being short overnight and weekends.
Is that the bonds?
Yeah, and I think it comes back to trading.
They've been on an uptrend for the last 40 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah, but being short equities, I don't mind over weekends, but being short generally bond markets, I think it comes back to the scarring of terrorist attacks and DEFCON instances where you think anything, this could end my career if something happens what's the point,
Absolutely.
So.
Okay. Any other questions? Whoever hold your.
One which is less trading related, more like about you as a person. Do you have any trading superstitions? Sort of like, I feel like a lot of my traders have silly little things, they do, or like they can't do before they trade and stuff. I'm just curious if you had any.
Sometimes. I guess.
So it's a question about trade superstitions.
Not so much superstition, but if I don't do certain things during the day, it doesn't put me in a good position mentally. Like, so for example, if I don't train at 10 a.m, normally I feel really shit. And if something's come out that hasn't allowed me to, it really annoys me and fogs up my brain almost. So I guess it's not doing the non-negotiables, I would say, is what normally brings me down.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I have superstitions, no, I don't think so.
Apart from the bubble and the shares.
Well, that's more knowing where your strengths lie, right?
Yeah.
And if you know at that particular moment your strength isn't in those markets, get the hell out of there.
When do you think you'll go back to trading this? You just watch them for that?
To be honest with you, bubble doesn't interest me anymore. Gilt doesn't really interest me. I think the market, I guess, you look at how the market's moving and you look at the mechanics of it, and those markets I just don't see as an independent trader without an algorithm. I don't think it's tradable. So, yeah.
Okay, I know we've taken more than enough of your time. We want to thank you so much for joining us and parting your experience and your knowledge, and I know that people in here online have really appreciated it. I mean, it's been myself as well. It's actually what's crazy is when I started, this was the first image that I really saw when I started, and this so it's almost a bit of a boyhood crush of being here, being able to speak to you back all these years when, and the only other time I ever saw you was when I was on Recca. You came, I think, for a day, and I remember seeing you in the distance. I think the halo was above your head at the time, and your actual screen, and you just had this presence in front of you. You had this very upright physique, and there's only one other trader, and so it almost looked like you commanded your coliseum that you're operating. You had a presence. You were dressed well. You were suit and boot, and not a hoodie, but you were dressed well, and you were dominating your screen. And I just felt that kind of that physical presence is also very important of what you coming to your trading arena. And there was a very strong and powerful image after this image. So thank you very much, Andy.
It was a pleasure. And I hope it, if I've said something, one particular thing can sometimes, trigger.
Absolutely.
So I hope you pick up on that trigger.
Yeah, we hope to get you back again in the foreseeable future. Yeah, on the retreat.
Yeah.
We have.
I'm interested in hear what this funky stuff is.
I'll explain to you more. Yeah. Thank you. We'll just take this.